I think I've been pretty self-motivated for as long as I can remember, because I've faced a lot of obstacles. A lot of things can move me, but the ones that I'm probably drawn to the most are the ones that are all-consuming, where I binge listen to it, and 10 years later it still stays with me, and I think about it, and I don't even have to listen to it. I just get these emotions from it. Growing up, it was a time of great discovery. There was always music playing somewhere. My parents have this huge collection of LPs, most of which are in the genre easy listening or adult contemporary, and it's vast, anything you can imagine. And the thing about that genre is that it's quite trippy, it's quite psychedelic, and a lot of it was very risk-taking and very experimental. The instrumentation was not limited. Orchestral instruments, drum kit, electronics. It really inspired the way I think of orchestration and the way I think of recording. I was about 3 or 4 years old and I started making things up, and my parents would start recording them. And a few years later, about 6 or 7 or 8 years old, I would use all these devices that I was surrounded by. So all these electronic relics that had died, they were no longer useful to the public because they were malfunctioning. My dad kept them all. So there was this amazing life after death for these analog devices. And so I would take one boombox and play and sing or whatever I need to do, or record electronic device onto it. Then I had another one, and I'd play that back and then record in real time while this was playing back, and then multi-track this way. I would do this many times till at the end you have this piece of music, but also all the air sound, right? All the room sounds, like, and all these crazy things. I'd spent a lot of time doing this. My first instrument was piano, and then there was a guitar lying around the house, so I taught myself guitar. That was the first instance where I would say, I'm composing or writing, but there was no notation. I used my ears. I didn't read music very well until much later. And then when I was 14, I wrote this long piano solo, and I'm going to write it down. I didn't know that notation paper existed, so I spent hours and hours writing some staves. I grew up around the shifting time signatures, the shifting tempos. Things didn't belong somewhere. I had no concept, even as a young person, of what things should be. It's how it was, and I have to find a way to bring it to this other place. So the way to do it was to notate, but develop my own notation system. The first band I really started to love on my own was Culture Club. I really immersed myself into new wave and just consumed. When I was about 12 years old, I decided to put the new wave away. I'd outgrown that, and now I was going to be a metal fan. So I was listening to a lot of Motley Crue and Rat and Dokken and all the bands that were coming out of LA. And this was very early on, before it became sort of slick and manufactured and formulaic. And then once it started to become formulaic, I sort of lost interest. I got into Metallica when Master Puppets came out, and I thought it was an amazing record. It was like nothing else I'd ever heard. At that time, too, I was listening to a lot of classical music, and the metal that I was listening to at that point, mainly Metallica and Megadeth, there were similarities. The swift tempo changes, the swift dynamic changes, just a lot of varieties of emotion and just taking you there. So I was always drawn to music like that, really risk-taking music. I was never a fan of anything that would follow a formula. Then I discovered Kate Bush. Kate Bush was a huge discovery, and still, and to this day, remains a massive influence. Everything about her, the way she was involved in the creation of her own videos, production, songwriting, of course, dancing, everything, it was all encompassing, and I was really drawn to that. My parents had this huge collection of LPs, but they also had films. And the RCA Select Division, this large, almost like an 8-track version of film.
Right now, your RCA video disc dealer has this remarkable machine for less than $500. So hurry down to his showroom for a demonstration of the RCA video disc player. It's going to change the way you watch television.
The magic phone on RCA.
that wouldn't last and it would glitch, and of course, thought this was amazing. I went from my parents' library, which was very specific, which was amazing, and then I went to music school, and there was just so much more. Oh my God. Beethoven wrote, I thought he wrote 6. No, he is 32, so let me listen to all 32. When I went to McGill, I didn't really know who Ligeti was, and all his scores were in the library, and I thought they looked like board games. It looked amazing. They looked like schematics. Growing up, my father was an electronics salesman and a repairman, so he would have schematics. Now I think of schematics and music scores and very similarly, the way you connect and what if you erase this, where does it go, that sort of thing. Ligeti, when I saw his scores, reminded me of that. Hitchcock is a huge, huge influence, not just visually. Even before I started working with visuals and film and images, the way he spoke about his edits and his filming style, he would refer to orchestration. He would use a lot of musical terms. And even as a very young person, I remember thinking that would be so great to apply to a piece of music. Try and use the same material, but switch the perspectives, looking at a different angle. And so every time the perspective is changed, the sound would change. For example, there's a scene in The Birds where she's in the phone booth near the end. After the big attack, everything is going to hell, And she's in the phone booth, and it's a great scene where he just does these series of, they're not quite stills, but she's holding her expression, and he's cut. And that sort of thing is very musical. For me, that's an orchestration. For a long time, I've called my music sort of melting music, where things sort of go wrong, malfunction in notation. I spent a lot of time, zooming and scrubbing and looking for these artifacts that are sort of beneath the surface. In Kubrick, the sound of the tricycle on the carpet, the audience is drawn, where is it going to lead? Isolating it and finding a way to transform it into a musical work. I'm drawn to these icons and these instruments and characters, as I call them, but I want to put them in unexpected places.
Thanks.
So I've always been drawn to the other. Something is underneath the surface. It creates otherworldliness, different universes. The whole intention is to suspend that scene and go deeper into it and sort of hack it and create a musical work out of it.
Or let's see if I can make it easier.